Blake Lively and the Wayfarer parties have until midnight to submit their initial pretrial filings, and I was going to wait and just see what came out and then decide what I wanted to go over first tonight. But then something just came up that was so bizarre, I thought it deserved a short video on the subject. The Wayfarer parties recently wrote a letter to the judge, I think it was last week, explaining that Blake Lively was basically trying to drown them in materials with like 45 witnesses on her list and close to 1,000 exhibits. And then after the judge ruled on the summary judgment motion and cut Lively's case like more than half, so she had 13 causes, now she has 3. Her attorneys have still been insisting that they need like these 800 exhibits, so it barely cut it down from 1,000 to 800, and still over 40 witnesses that they may be calling at trial. And apparently they're dumping some pretty bizarre, irrelevant materials on the Wayfarer parties that couldn't possibly be, relevant to Lively's case, including a Taylor Swift cookie recipe article, which is honestly just strange. What could that possibly have to do with her case? But let's take a look at this letter and see what's going on here. Also, guys, they write in this letter that it's expected to be a 15-day trial, so that's about like 3 weeks when you count in just business days. And I did end up starting a fundraiser to go to the trial and report on it. It's going to be expensive to be out in New York for that long, so I will put a link to that fundraiser, though, in the comments below and pin it. So Wayfarer is asking for an extension of time to review the new exhibits that Blake Lively has put forward. They say they want to raise further concerns about the voluminous overbreadth of Lively's witness and exhibits list, and the court will see upon receipt of the joint pretrial order, which, like I said, is due at midnight. Lively's lists are currently impractical for both pretrial and trial purposes, obscure the witnesses and exhibits the Wayfarer parties will actually have to confront, and create reams of unnecessary work at a time when the parties should be focusing their efforts for trial. And then this paragraph right here is what I basically already explained, which is that they had 40 witnesses and 1,000 exhibits, and they've barely cut that down here to 40 witnesses and more than 800 exhibits. Here's where they mention that it's going to be an estimated 15-day trial. They say, notwithstanding repeated requests, Lively has refused to identify which attachments she actually intends to present at trial, nor, in the case of numerous video and podcast exhibits, which time-stamped portion she plans to use. To give the court a flavor of what's been happening, Lively identified 68 new exhibits for the first time just after midnight and provided reviewable copies of those documents at approximately 3:40 a.m. this morning. And then they note in the footnote here that the link that they gave was defective, so they couldn't even begin to look at these materials until 10 o'clock this morning. There is no reason these exhibits could not have been identified earlier. Defense counsel are obviously in no position and should not have to review so many new materials at the last minute, especially on a day when they're consumed with numerous other tasks, including finalization of draft jury instructions, Daubert motions, and motions in limine. Like I said, these are due at midnight, so they're saying, how are we supposed to look over this stuff we just got at 10 a.m. when we have all this other stuff to do by the end of the day? When Lively's counsel advised yesterday that Lively would be identifying dozens of new exhibits, they initially refused to agree to an extension of time for Wayfarer to note objections to those exhibits. After the call, they offered the Wayfarer parties a 2-day period to review them, but only if the Wayfarer parties agreed Lively did not have to identify her new exhibits until next week. So if they give her until next week to identify them, I guess they would then give them 2 days to review what they've identified next week. When the Wayfarer parties objected to this one-sided proposal, Lively produced the exhibits at the last possible minute. The new exhibits include additional video exhibits without specification of the portions Lively intends to use. Others are summary exhibits, one of which is 54 pages long. Still, others are documents that Lively has had access to all along, but chose not to identify at a more convenient time, such as text messages between Lively and various witnesses. And here's where this gets kind of ridiculous, because I don't know what she could possibly be using some of this stuff for, other than to make herself look good and special and in line with these popular celebrities. It says, even a brief glance at some of their contents suggests little discrimination in terms of what might actually be admissible at trial. They include, for example, a speech Lively made about her husband Ryan Reynolds' commitment to his family, and pictures of Lively with Taylor Swift. Unclear why that matters, but okay. Lively also provided additional materials this morning, which her counsel explained after inquiry are intended to be revisions or additional components of previously identified exhibits. These two appear to be of limited relevance or practical value. For instance, they include an article about a Taylor Swift cookie recipe that was linked in other correspondence. It is exceptionally unlikely Lively would show such materials or that the jury would gain any insight from them. Well, they might gain insight from them, just not about Lively's case, Maybe some of them want to take up baking. Why the hell is it appropriate to bury the Wayfarer party's counsel in this kind of crap? That just seems silly to me. I mean, like, I'm not a lawyer. You guys know that. So always leave a little room for maybe there's just something I don't understand. But that is just... okay. Counsel for the Wayfarer parties understand that witness and exhibit lists tend to err on the side of being over-inclusive, as counsel are still making final determinations for trial. But there's a difference between over-inclusive lists that nevertheless remain within practical parameters and lists so overly broad as to fluster the other side's ability to anticipate evidence and prepare accordingly. The Wayfarer party should be permitted to prepare their defenses in an orderly way without having to slog through huge amounts of materials and without cumbersome last-minute additions. So they're asking the judge to give them an extra week to make objections to the 68 exhibits that Lively just identified this morning and to prepare any additional motions in limine accordingly. So if they want to try to exclude that evidence. They're asking the court to direct Lively to narrow her witness lists, at least to delineate between primary and rebuttal witnesses, and to eliminate those witnesses she does not intend to call at trial, and to direct Lively to narrow her exhibit list to a number of exhibits reasonably suitable for trial, including specification of which documentary attachments she intends to use, and of which time-stamped portions of videos or podcasts she intends to use. So that's a letter the Wayfarer parties just wrote to the judge, and remember, there's all these documents coming out tonight. We're going to have a lot to go over, so I was planning on going live a little bit later when all that stuff starts to come out. We did have some motions come in already, the renewed motion for summary judgment by tag. There's a renewed motion for judgment on the pleadings based on FIHA by Wayfarer and tag, and it ends with Us Movie LLC. So it could narrow the case even further. I'm not sure, though, how strong those arguments are because I only took a quick look at them. I'm going to have to kind of pick and choose what I go through tonight because there's going to be a lot of stuff to come up, so... like I said, guys, I'm posting a link to the Give, Send, Go for the trial fund in the comments of this video below. If you have any extra money and you want to help out so that I can go and stay the whole time and report on the trial, that would be helpful. As always, if you are, I don't know why I said as always, I've never done anything like this before, but if you are struggling with money, please don't feel the need to give me anything. And if you are having to choose between donating to this fundraiser and donating to like a charity, obviously, donate to the charity instead. But if you have any extra and you want to help out so I can go and stay there the whole time and report, then I would appreciate that. So just don't forget to hit the like button for me. It helps me out a lot. And I will see you guys soon, probably later tonight.